At 11:23 in the morning in eastern Ukraine, a Russian military convoy moving along Highway M3 toward Avdiivka was struck in an operation that Ukrainian intelligence and aviation had planned for hours. The column consisted of 23 vehicles, including ammunition carriers, fuel tankers loaded with thousands of gallons of diesel, infantry fighting vehicles, and command trucks transporting radios and battlefield maps intended to support upcoming Russian actions. At the convoy's front and rear, two Pantsir S1 air defense systems, each valued at roughly $15 million, provided radar-guided surface-to-air missile coverage and 30mm cannon protection under clear skies that Russian commanders believed offered a safe window for transit. According to Ukrainian intelligence assessments, signals intercepts gathered earlier that morning exposed convoy call signs, logistics codes, and speed reports. Analysts mapped the route, confirmed an approximate pace of 45 miles per hour, and maintained continuous surveillance for nearly 3 hours over more than 28 miles of movement. Data streams from satellite imagery, drone reconnaissance, and intercepted radio traffic were fused inside a centralized command node, allowing Ukrainian planners to monitor the formation in real time. The mission assigned to a Ukrainian Su-25 attack aircraft was defined by timing and geometry. The jet, an older, armored Soviet-era platform equipped with 2 laser-guided missiles and 80 unguided rockets, was ordered to strike before the convoy reached protected airspace. Russian air defense coverage in the sector included not only the 2 Pantsir vehicles, but also a Tor M2 battery roughly 14 miles away and a Buk M2 system forming a deeper defensive layer. Russian Su-30M fighters were also reported to be patrolling within potential response distance. Despite this layered grid, Ukrainian pilots had spent 2 years analyzing Russian radar behavior and engagement cycles, identifying narrow exposure windows in which a strike might succeed. Terrain masking became essential as the Su-25 descended to extremely low altitude, using hills, tree lines, and road overpasses to stay below radar detection. By the time the convoy reached mile marker 47 and continued its push across exposed asphalt, Ukrainian ground controllers updated approach vectors by fractions of a mile. The operational window was shrinking to less than 25 minutes. The clear sky above the convoy concealed an approaching aircraft designed not to survive a head-on exchange with modern air defenses, but to exploit a brief moment when those defenses could be overwhelmed. As the Su-25 closed to within 5 miles of the target, the pilot initiated the climb that would expose the aircraft to Russian radar. The jet rose rapidly from low altitude to nearly 3,000 feet, triggering immediate detection by both Pantsir S1 systems positioned at the convoy's front and rear. Inside the Russian air defense vehicles, warning systems activated as tracking radars locked onto the rising aircraft, and engagement solutions were computed within milliseconds. Ukrainian targeting systems stabilized, and 2 laser-guided missiles were launched in quick succession at approximately 7 miles distance, each aimed at one of the Pantsir units. The Russian crews responded by firing interceptor missiles and initiating sustained cannon bursts, creating dense fragmentation patterns in the aircraft's projected flight path. The Su-25 pilot released chaff to distort radar tracking, generating false signatures in the engagement zone. Despite the layered air defense presence, including a Tor M2 battery preparing to engage and a Buk M2 system adjusting radar orientation farther to the rear, the Ukrainian missiles continued on course. The first impact struck the lead Pantsir's radar array, destroying its dish and disabling its electronics within a second. The second missile hit the rear Pantsir near its missile tubes and crew compartment, leaving the system incapacitated without a secondary explosion. Both Russian air defense vehicles, valued at roughly $15 million each, were neutralized in less than 20 seconds. With the convoy's immediate protective systems eliminated, the Ukrainian aircraft climbed to approximately 6,000 feet to begin the attack run. Below, the Russian formation continued advancing across open pavement. The pilot released multiple salvos of unguided rockets, 80 in total, distributing fire across the full length of the 2.5-mile convoy. A fuel tanker carrying thousands of gallons of diesel suffered a direct hit, erupting into a fireball that ignited nearby vehicles. An ammunition transport detonated shortly afterward, producing secondary explosions that sent shockwaves across the area. Infantry fighting vehicles were overturned or disabled by concussive force. Command trucks lost communications capability as antennas and equipment were damaged. The strike lasted less than 1 minute over target, but the effects were immediate and widespread. Columns of smoke rose thousands of feet. Fires engulfed multiple sections of the roadway. Russian air defense assets farther from the convoy attempted to reacquire and engage the retreating aircraft, and additional missile launches were reported. But the Su-25 descended rapidly to low altitude to avoid radar coverage. Despite sustaining damage from shrapnel and blast pressure, the aircraft remained controllable and continued flying at under 300 feet to exit the engagement area. Approximately 15 minutes after the attack began, the Su-25 crossed back into Ukrainian airspace. The operation demonstrated the effectiveness of timing and intelligence-driven flight profiles against the convoy, protected by multiple layers of Russian air defense. Minutes later, reconnaissance drones arrived over the strike zone, confirming widespread destruction and immobilization across the Russian formation. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones surveying the aftermath reported that 9 Russian vehicles were destroyed beyond recovery, 8 were heavily damaged and immobilized, and 6 were abandoned along the highway. The 2 to 5 mile stretch of Highway M3 around the strike zone was blocked by burning fuel, shattered armor, and deep craters left by detonations. The roadway, once used as a logistics corridor, was rendered impassable, cutting off the intended resupply route. As a result, Russian frontline units expecting ammunition, diesel, and reinforcement assets did not receive scheduled deliveries, slowing their operational tempo in the sector for the following week. Military analysts noted that the Ukrainian strike demonstrated significant cost asymmetry. 2 laser-guided missiles priced in the hundreds of thousands of dollars each, combined with 80 unguided rockets costing only thousands per unit, neutralized air defense platforms valued at about $15 million apiece, and disrupted a convoy carrying equipment worth millions more. The operation showed how coordinated intelligence inputs, including satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and drone surveillance, provided a real-time picture that enabled Ukrainian forces to identify vulnerabilities in an otherwise layered Russian defensive posture. The engagement highlighted limitations within the Russian air defense grid. Although multiple systems were present in the wider area, including the Tor M2 unit, valued at approximately $25 million, and the Buk M2 system, costing well over $100 million, none engaged the Ukrainian aircraft in time to prevent the strike. Russian Su-30M fighters, reported to be operating within response range, did not arrive before the Ukrainian aircraft completed its attack run and retreated at low altitude. Analysts attributed this to narrow exposure windows, terrain masking by the Su-25 pilot, and rapid execution measured in seconds rather than minutes. The incident also underscored the vulnerability of large logistics formations, operating in daylight along exposed routes. Despite active radar scanning, clear weather, and escorting air defense vehicles positioned at both ends of the convoy, the strike showed that detection did not guarantee interception. The Ukrainian attack relied on understanding radar sweep intervals, engagement cycles, terrain effects, and the momentary gaps in a system designed to present a continuous protective bubble. Ukrainian officials stated that the success of the operation was not the result of superior aircraft design, noting the Su-25's dated airframe, subsonic performance, and limited onboard electronics. Instead, they emphasized the integration of intelligence, real-time tracking, and precision timing. They reported that the convoy's assumption that daylight conditions provided protection proved incorrect, and that the failure to adapt movement patterns allowed Ukrainian forces to execute a measured strike. The destruction of the convoy contributed to a temporary operational shift on the front line, with Russian units forced to adjust supply plans and modify their logistics footprint. The Ukrainian military described the strike as an example of how coordinated intelligence and rapid decision-making can challenge more expensive and complex defensive systems. The incident reinforced broader assessments that the conflict continues to hinge not only on equipment, but on the ability to exploit brief tactical opportunities. Subscribe for continued coverage and detailed analysis of developments in the region.